At my husband's funeral, my daughter-in-law ripped the scarf off my head and screamed, "Stop faking cancer! You shaved your hair just to secure his inheritance." Everyone laughed at my exposed bald head while I wept. That's when a mysterious man stepped up, covered my head with his jacket, and said 6 words no one could have predicted. "I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from so I can see how far my story has reached. My name is Sylvia, and I never imagined that the worst moment of my life would happen at my husband's funeral." I stood there in my black dress, the fabric loose around my shrinking frame, watching as people filed past Donovan's casket, 64 years old, and I felt ancient. The silk scarf wrapped around my head was my shield against the world's stares, hiding what the chemotherapy had stolen from me. Every strand of hair, every eyebrow, every eyelash, gone. Donovan had been my anchor for 38 years. When the doctor first said the word cancer 6 months ago, his hand tightened around mine like a lifeline. "We'll fight this together," he whispered, and we did, until his heart gave out 3 weeks ago, leaving me to face this battle alone. The funeral home was packed. Donovan had been beloved in our small town of Cedar Falls. But as I accepted condolences, I couldn't shake the feeling that eyes were following me, whispers trailing in my wake. Most came from one corner of the room where my daughter-in-law Eleni held court. Eleni had married my son Andre 12 years ago, and from day one, she made it clear I wasn't welcome in their perfect little world. She was beautiful in that sharp, calculated way. Blonde hair always perfectly styled, makeup flawless even at 7 in the morning. Everything about her screamed control, from her manicured nails to her designer handbags that cost more than most people's monthly rent. "Poor Andre," I heard her telling a group of neighbors, her voice carrying just enough to reach my ears. "He's been so worried about his inheritance, with his mother's condition. Medical bills must be astronomical." My stomach clenched. She said condition like it was something shameful, something I'd chosen. I adjusted my scarf, making sure it covered every inch of my scalp. Andre stood beside his wife, nodding along with whatever she was saying. My heart broke a little more. My son, my beautiful, sensitive boy who used to bring me dandelions and call them roses, had become a stranger. Eleni had molded him into someone I barely recognized. The service was beautiful. Pastor Williams spoke about Donovan's kindness, his generosity, how he'd helped rebuild the Johnson family's barn after the storm last spring. People shared memories that made me smile through my tears. For a moment, I felt surrounded by love. Then came the reception. I was standing near the memory table, looking at photos of Donovan through the years, when I felt a presence behind me. I turned to find Eleni, her blue eyes cold as winter. "We need to talk," she said, her voice low but sharp. "Not here, Eleni. Not today." She grabbed my arm, her manicured nails digging into my skin. "Yes, here. Yes, today." Her voice rose, drawing attention from nearby mourners. "I'm tired of this charade, Sylvia." "What charade?" I kept my voice steady, though my heart was racing. "This." She gestured at my scarf with disgust. "This pathetic bid for sympathy. Don't think I don't see what you're doing." People were turning now, forming a loose circle around us. Andre appeared at Eleni's side, looking confused and embarrassed. "Eleni, please," he said quietly. "Not now." But she was beyond hearing him. Her face was flushed with anger, or maybe wine. I could smell it on her breath. "Your mother thinks she's so clever, Andre. Playing the victim, making everyone feel sorry for her." "I don't know what you're talking about," I whispered. But I could feel the crowd growing, could sense their curiosity turning to something uglier. "Oh, you don't?" Eleni's laugh was sharp as broken glass. "Then why don't you show everyone what's really under that scarf?" Before I could react, before anyone could stop her, Eleni lunged forward and ripped the silk scarf from my head. The gasp that went through the crowd was audible. I stood there exposed, my bald scalp pale and vulnerable under the fluorescent lights. A few people covered their mouths in shock. Others just stared. "Look!" Eleni shouted, holding my scarf like a trophy. "Look at her! She shaved her head. She's faking cancer just to secure Donovan's inheritance. She thinks if she looks sick enough, pitiful enough, no one will question why she gets everything. The words hit me like physical blows. The room spun around me as laughter began, first a nervous chuckle from someone in the back, then spreading like wildfire. People who had just been offering their condolences were now staring at me like I was some kind of fraud. "That's sick," someone whispered. "Can you believe it? At her own husband's funeral?" I always thought there was something off about her. I tried to cover my head with my hands, tried to find my voice to defend myself, but the words wouldn't come. Tears streamed down my face as Andre stood frozen, saying nothing, doing nothing. "She's been milking this for months," Eleni continued, her voice growing stronger with each word of support from the crowd. "Acting like she's dying, making Donovan feel guilty, manipulating him into changing his will. Well, I won't let her steal my children's inheritance with this pathetic act." The laughter grew louder. Someone in the back shouted, "Shame on you!" Another voice called out, "Have you no decency?" I stood there sobbing, completely exposed and humiliated, when suddenly the room fell silent. A man had stepped forward from the crowd, tall, maybe 70, with silver hair and kind eyes. I'd never seen him before, but something about him seemed familiar. He moved with quiet authority, and when he spoke, his voice carried through the room. "That's enough," he said simply. Without another word, he shrugged out of his dark suit jacket and gently placed it over my head, covering my scalp with infinite tenderness. His movements were careful, respectful, like he was handling something precious. Then he looked directly at Eleni, and his expression hardened. When he spoke, his words were quiet, but they cut through the silence like a blade. "She's not faking anything, and you're not getting a dime." Eleni's face went white. The scarf fell from her suddenly limp fingers. Who are you?" she stammered. The man smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Someone who knows exactly what Donovan thought of you." The room was dead silent now. Even the laughter had stopped. Andre was staring at the stranger with confusion, while Eleni looked like she'd seen a ghost. The man turned to me, his voice gentle again. "Come on, dear. Let's get you out of here." As he guided me toward the door, I heard Eleni behind us, her voice high and panicked. "Wait! You can't just leave. Who are you? What did you mean about the money?" But the stranger didn't turn around. He just kept walking, one protective hand on my shoulder, leading me away from the worst moment of my life. And as we stepped outside into the cool afternoon air, I couldn't shake the feeling that this mysterious man held the key to secrets I never knew existed. 3 days had passed since the funeral, and I hadn't left my house. Every time I closed my eyes, I could hear that laughter echoing in my head, could feel the weight of those stares on my exposed scalp. The stranger's jacket still hung in my closet. I'd wanted to return it, but I had no idea who he was or how to find him. I sat in Donovan's recliner, the one he'd claimed was perfectly molded to his body after 20 years of use, and let myself remember. Sometimes that's all you can do when the present hurts too much, escape into the past. Eleni had always hated me, but it hadn't started that way. When Andre first brought her home 12 years ago, I'd tried so hard to welcome her. I remember spending an entire weekend making her favorite lasagna from scratch, buying fresh flowers for the guest room, even learning to make those fancy cocktails she liked. "Mrs. Patterson," she'd said that first night, her smile bright but somehow cold. "You really didn't need to go to all this trouble. Please call me Sylvia," I'd replied, setting down her martini. "We're family now." But family was never what Eleni wanted from me. What she wanted was distance. It started small, comments about how the house was so quaint, but really needed updating. Suggestions that maybe Andre deserved a mother who was more sophisticated. Little digs about my clothes, my hair, the way I pronounced certain words. "Mom's from a different generation," Andre would say, trying to keep peace. But each time he moved a little further toward Eleni's side, a little further away from mine. The worst part was watching my son change. Andre had been such a loving boy, always bringing me wildflowers, insisting on helping with dinner even when he was tiny. He'd tell me about his dreams, his fears, his hopes. We used to talk for hours. But Eleni changed that. Slowly, methodically, like a gardener pulling weeds. "Andre, your mother doesn't need to know about our financial plans," she'd say. Or, "Maybe we shouldn't visit so often. Your mother seems overwhelmed." She was never cruel in front of Andre. Never obvious about it. She was too smart for that. Instead, she'd wait until he left the room to make her little comments. "You know, Sylvia, Andre mentioned you've been calling him at work. He's under so much pressure. Maybe you could try to be less needy?" "I just wanted to check on him," I'd said. "He sounded tired when we talked last week." "That's sweet, but he's a grown man now. He needs space to build his own life." Space. That became Eleni's favorite word. Andre needed space from family obligations, space from old traditions, space from his mother's outdated way of thinking. And gradually, I gave him that space. What choice did I have? I watched my son slip away, conversation by conversation, visit by visit, until we were strangers sharing a bloodline and nothing more. The cancer diagnosis 6 months ago should have brought us together, should have reminded Andre that time is precious, that family matters. And it did, for about a week. "Mom, I'm so sorry," he'd cried when I told him. "We'll get through this together." But Eleni had other ideas. "Are you sure you want to put Andre through this emotional stress?" she'd asked me privately the next day. "You know how sensitive he is. Maybe it would be better if you handled this quietly, with your own doctors." "But he's my son," I'd whispered. "Exactly. Which is why you should protect him from unnecessary pain." So I did. I protected my son from knowing how scared I was, how the treatments made me so sick I couldn't eat for days, how I sometimes sat in my car after chemotherapy sessions and cried until I couldn't breathe. I protected him from seeing me lose my hair, my strength, my hope. Donovan had been furious. "She's manipulating him," he'd said after another canceled visit. "Can't Andre see what she's doing?" But Andre couldn't see it. Or maybe he didn't want to. Love makes us blind sometimes, and my son loved his wife with the desperate intensity of someone who'd been convinced he wasn't worthy of that love. I was lost in these painful memories when the doorbell rang. My heart jumped. Since the funeral, I'd been afraid of visitors, afraid of more humiliation, more judgment. But when I looked through the peephole, I saw the stranger from the funeral standing on my porch. He looked different in daylight, older, gentler. He was holding a small bouquet of daisies, my favorite flowers, though I had no idea how he could know that. I opened the door slowly, still wearing his jacket over my nightgown. "Hello, Sylvia," he said, and his voice was kind. "I hope you don't mind me coming by. I wanted to check on you." I don't even know your name," I said. "I should return your jacket. Keep it as long as you need it. My name is Marcus." He paused, studying my face. Marcus Patterson, my married name. My heart stopped. "I know this is confusing," he said quickly, seeing my shock. "May I come in? There's so much I need to tell you." I stepped aside, my hands shaking. Patterson. But Donovan had no brothers. His parents had died when he was young, and he'd been an only child. We'd talked about it so many times. How he'd wished he'd had siblings, how he'd envied families with big Sunday dinners and cousin reunions. Marcus followed me into the living room, looking around with an expression I couldn't read. His eyes lingered on the family photos, on Donovan's reading glasses still sitting on the side table, on the half-finished crossword puzzle we'd been working on together the night before he died. "You have a beautiful home," he said softly. Donovan described it perfectly. "How did you know my husband?" The question came out as a whisper. Marcus sat down across from me, the daisies still clutched in his weathered hands. "Sylvia, what I'm about to tell you is going to be hard to believe, but I need you to know that everything your daughter-in-law said at the funeral, every cruel word, every accusation, was exactly what Donovan feared would happen." "I don't understand." Donovan was my twin brother. The words hung in the air between us like a bomb waiting to explode. I stared at him, searching his face for some sign that this was a cruel joke, but the longer I looked, the more I could see it. The same blue eyes, the same gentle slope of the nose, the same way of tilting his head when he was thinking. That's impossible, I breathed. Donovan was an only child. He told you what our parents made him promise to tell everyone, Marcus said quietly. I was born with what they called developmental delays back then. Nothing severe. I was just slower to learn, struggled in school. But in 1953, that was seen as a shameful family secret. My chest felt tight. What are you saying? When we were 8 years old, our parents sent me away to a special school. They told everyone I'd died of pneumonia, made Donovan promise never to speak of me again, and he kept that promise. Until about 6 months ago. 6 months ago. When I was diagnosed. He came to see me, Marcus continued. First time in over 50 years. He was so upset, so worried about you. He said his daughter-in-law was a dangerous woman who was turning his son against you, and he was terrified of what would happen to you when he was gone. Tears were streaming down my face now. He never said anything to me. He wanted to protect you, just like he'd been protecting me all these years. Marcus reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a thick envelope. He gave me this, along with very specific instructions about when and how to use it. I took the envelope with trembling hands. My name was written on the front in Donovan's careful handwriting, and beneath it, 4 words that made my blood run cold. In case of Eleni. She's not getting a dime, Marcus said, echoing his words from the funeral. Donovan made sure of that. But first, there's something else you need to know about your daughter-in-law. Something that's going to change everything. I clutched the envelope to my chest, feeling like the ground was shifting beneath my feet. My husband had a twin brother. A brother who'd been hidden away for over 50 years. A brother who apparently knew secrets that could destroy Eleni. And judging by the weight of the envelope in my hands, those secrets were about to come to light. I stared at the envelope in my hands, Donovan's familiar handwriting blurring through my tears. Marcus sat across from me, patient and still, giving me time to process what he'd just revealed. My husband's twin brother, hidden away for over 50 years because of a family's shame. I need to understand, I finally whispered. How is this possible? Donovan never mentioned you. Not once in 38 years of marriage. Marcus's face was heavy with old pain. Our parents were different people back then. When I was diagnosed with what they called mental deficiency, what we'd call a learning disability now, they saw it as a reflection on the family name. The Patterson reputation was everything to them. He stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the garden Donovan had tended so carefully. The story they told was that I died of pneumonia when we were 8. They even held a fake funeral, made Donovan throw dirt on an empty coffin. His voice caught. Can you imagine? Making a child bury his twin brother while that brother was still alive? My heart ached for both of them. Where did they send you? Willowbrook State School in New York. It was a terrible place, Sylvia. Children like me were warehoused there, forgotten. But I survived. And when I turned 18, I aged out and made my own way in the world. Did Donovan know where you were? Not until I found him. Marcus turned back to me, his eyes bright with unshed tears. It took me 40 years to track him down. 40 years of searching for my twin brother, wondering if he even remembered me. When I finally found him 3 years ago, he broke down and cried for an hour. 3 years ago. I tried to remember if Donovan had seemed different around that time, if there had been any signs, but he'd hidden it perfectly, just like he'd hidden so many other burdens to protect the people he loved. Why didn't he tell me? I asked, though part of me already knew the answer. Because he was afraid you'd want to help, and he didn't want to burden you with his guilt. He blamed himself, you see, for not fighting harder to find me, for keeping his parents' secret all those years. Marcus sat back down, leaning forward earnestly. But when you got sick, everything changed. He was terrified of leaving you alone with that woman, Eleni. Even her name made my stomach clench. He told me everything about her, Marcus continued. How she'd isolated Andre from you. How she manipulated every situation to make you look bad. How she'd been planting seeds about your mental state, your worthiness as a grandmother. My mental state? I felt a chill run down my spine. She's been telling people you're becoming forgetful, unstable, setting the groundwork to contest any inheritance you might receive. Marcus's jaw tightened. Donovan was sick about it. He said she was already talking about putting you in a nursing home after he died. The pieces were falling into place, creating a picture so ugly I could barely comprehend it. She wants me out of the way, completely. And she's been working on Andre for years, convincing him that supporting you financially would be a burden on their future children, making him believe that tough love was what you needed. I thought about my son's increasing distance, his reluctance to visit, the way he always seemed uncomfortable when I called. Had Eleni really manipulated him that thoroughly? Open the envelope, Marcus said gently. Donovan wanted you to know everything. With shaking hands, I tore open the seal. Inside were several documents, and on top, a letter in Donovan's handwriting. I recognized the careful script, the way he dotted his I's and crossed his T's. My name at the top was written with such tenderness it made my chest ache. My dearest Sylvia, I read aloud, my voice barely a whisper. If you're reading this, then I'm gone, and Marcus has come to help you as we planned. First, you must know that every day with you has been a gift. You are the strongest, most generous woman I have ever known, and I have loved you with every breath in my body. I had to stop reading, overcome with grief. Marcus reached over and squeezed my hand. Take your time, he said softly. I wiped my eyes and continued. I need you to know that I have been watching Eleni carefully for years, documenting her behavior, protecting you in ways you never knew. She is dangerous, Sylvia, and I couldn't bear the thought of leaving you defenseless against her manipulation. My hands were trembling so hard I could barely hold the paper. What did he mean, documenting her behavior? Marcus reached for another paper in the envelope. He meant this. He handed me what looked like a typed report, several pages thick. 3 years of observations, conversations, incidents, all carefully dated and documented. I scanned the first page, my eyes widening with each entry. March 15th, 2021. Eleni told Andre that Sylvia called 6 times yesterday asking for money. Checked phone records. Sylvia called once to wish Andre happy birthday. June 3rd, 2021. Eleni suggested to Andre that Sylvia is becoming scattered and might need supervision. Observed Sylvia same day, sharp as ever, helped neighbor fix tax paperwork. September 10th, 2021. Overheard Eleni on phone telling friend that Sylvia is getting weird about money and probably shouldn't be trusted with financial decisions. No evidence of any financial issues or concerning behavior from Sylvia. Page after page of lies, manipulations, and calculated cruelty. Each entry was like a knife to my heart, not just because of what Eleni had done, but because of what my son had believed. He was protecting me all along, I whispered. He was protecting both of you, Marcus said. Andre too, in his way. Donovan knew that someday his son would need to see the truth about his wife. I flipped through more pages, finding bank statements, copies of emails, even photographs. How did he get all this? Donovan was smarter than Eleni gave him credit for. He started recording phone conversations after she tried to convince Andre to put you in a nursing home while you were still healthy. He installed security cameras around the house after she started going through your personal papers when you weren't looking. She was going through my papers? Looking for financial information, insurance policies, anything she could use. She even tried to get your medical records by pretending to be your daughter-in-law arranging care. Marcus's expression darkened. She's been planning this for a long time, Sylvia. I felt sick. All these years, I'd thought Eleni simply didn't like me. I'd never imagined she was actively working to destroy my relationship with my son, plotting to steal my home, my security, my dignity. There's more, Marcus said quietly, pointing to another document in the envelope. This one was official-looking, with a law firm's letterhead at the top. As I read, my breath caught in my throat. It was a will, Donovan's real will, dated just 2 months before his death. And according to this document, everything, the house, the savings, the life insurance, was left to me. with specific protections against any claims from Eleni. But the lawyer read a different will at the reading last week, I said, confused. In that one, everything was split between Andre and me, with Eleni as Andre's beneficiary if anything happened to him. Marcus smiled grimly. That was the fake will. The one Donovan made sure Eleni knew about. She's been counting on that money, probably already spending it in her mind. How is that possible? Donovan filed the real will with a different law firm, one Eleni doesn't know about. The will that was read last week was an older version that he never officially revoked, until he filed this one. Marcus tapped the document. This is his true final testament, properly witnessed and notarized. I stared at the papers, my mind reeling. She's going to fight this. Let her try. Donovan anticipated that too. He handed me another thick folder. Financial records showing that you and Donovan paid for your own medical expenses. Documentation of all the lies she told about your condition. Witness statements from friends and neighbors who can testify to your sound mental state. It was overwhelming. Years of careful preparation, all designed to protect me from a daughter-in-law I'd tried so hard to love. There's one more thing, Marcus said, his voice growing serious. Something Donovan discovered just before he died. Something about Eleni that even Andre doesn't know. He reached for the final document in the envelope, and as I saw what it was, my blood turned to ice. She's done this before, Sylvia. You're not her first victim. The paper in my hands was a private investigator's report, complete with photographs and court documents, and the story it told made everything else pale in comparison. Eleni had been married before, twice, and both of her previous husbands' mothers had died under suspicious circumstances, leaving everything to their sons, and by extension, to her. I looked up at Marcus, my face white with shock. Andre's in danger. Marcus nodded grimly. Donovan thought so too. That's why he made sure this information would come to light after his death. He couldn't risk Eleni finding out what he knew while he was alive. We have to warn him. We will. But first, we need to make sure she can't hurt you anymore. Tomorrow morning, we're going to pay a visit to the real lawyer, and we're going to make sure Donovan's actual will is executed exactly as he intended. I clutched the documents to my chest, feeling overwhelmed and terrified and grateful all at once. My husband had protected me even beyond the grave, and now his hidden brother was here to carry out that protection. But as I looked at the evidence of Eleni's past crimes, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. A woman who had killed twice wouldn't hesitate to kill again, especially when her carefully laid plans were falling apart. And I was the only thing standing between her and everything she'd worked so hard to steal. The law office of Hartwell, Morrison & Associates was nothing like the modest practice where Donovan's fake will had been read. This downtown firm occupied 3 floors of a gleaming glass building, with marble floors and oil paintings that probably cost more than my annual income. I sat in the plush waiting room beside Marcus, clutching my purse and trying not to feel intimidated. Mrs. Patterson? A distinguished man in his 60s approached us, his silver hair perfectly styled and his suit clearly expensive. I'm Edward Morrison. I'm so sorry for your loss. Marcus stood and shook his hand. Mr. Morrison, thank you for seeing us on such short notice. This is Sylvia, Donovan's widow. Of course, please come into my office. He led us down a hallway lined with legal books and into a corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. I have to say, Mrs. Patterson, your husband was one of the most thorough clients I've ever worked with. He thought of everything. I'm still trying to understand how he managed to keep 2 wills without me knowing, I said, settling into a leather chair that probably cost more than my couch. Mr. Morrison smiled sympathetically. Donovan was very concerned about protecting you, especially after his diagnosis. He came to me about 8 months ago, right around the time you started your cancer treatment. 8 months ago, even before his own heart problems began. He was quite distressed about your daughter-in-law, Mr. Morrison continued, pulling out a thick file. He felt she was a threat to your well-being and wanted to ensure you'd be protected after his death. The will we prepared includes some very specific provisions. He opened the file and began reading. The primary residence at 47 Maple Street, including all furnishings and personal property, is left entirely to Sylvia Rose Patterson. The house cannot be sold, mortgaged, or transferred without Mrs. Patterson's express written consent, and she retains the right to live there for the remainder of her natural life. I felt tears prick my eyes. Donovan had made sure I could never be forced out of our home. The savings account, containing approximately $230,000, is also left entirely to Mrs. Patterson, as is the life insurance policy valued at $500,000, $730,000. More money than I'd ever dreamed of having. But Mr. Morrison wasn't finished. Additionally, there's a provision regarding your son Andre. He will inherit $50,000 outright, but the remainder of what would have been his inheritance, approximately $300,000, is being held in trust. What kind of trust? Marcus asked. A very specific one. Andre can only access these funds if he meets certain conditions. Mr. Morrison adjusted his glasses. First, he must attend at least 6 months of family counseling with his mother. Second, any legal challenges to this will or attempts to contest Mrs. Patterson's inheritance will result in immediate forfeiture of the trust funds. My heart ached. Even in death, Donovan was trying to bring our son back to me. There's more, Mr. Morrison said. If Andre divorces his current wife within 5 years of Donovan's death, the full $300,000 becomes available to him immediately. But if he remains married to Eleni, the money stays in trust until he's 65 years old. Marcus let out a low whistle. Donovan really thought this through. He was extremely concerned about Eleni's influence over Andre, Mr. Morrison explained. He felt that financial pressure might help his son see the situation more clearly. But how do we know Andre will choose the money over his wife? I asked. Mr. Morrison's expression grew serious. Because Mrs. Patterson, Donovan left instructions for additional information to be revealed to Andre at specific intervals, information that might change his perspective on his marriage. He pulled out another folder. Your husband hired a private investigator to research Eleni's background. What they found is disturbing. I'd already seen some of this the night before, but hearing it laid out in legal terms made it even more chilling. Eleni Kozlov, her maiden name, was previously married to Robert Chen in Los Angeles. Chen died in what appeared to be an accidental fall down the stairs of his home. His mother, who lived with them, died 3 weeks later of what was ruled a heart attack brought on by grief. Eleni inherited everything, approximately $400,000. My stomach turned. And the second husband? Marcus Henley, a widower from Phoenix. His elderly mother had moved in with them after being diagnosed with early-stage dementia. Within 6 months, the mother was dead from what appeared to be an overdose of her medication, ruled accidental. Mr. Henley died 2 months later in a car accident. Again, Eleni was the beneficiary, this time to the tune of $600,000. That's over $1 million, Marcus said quietly. Yes, and in both cases, there were family members who suspected foul play, but there wasn't enough evidence to pursue charges. Mr. Morrison leaned forward. The pattern is unmistakable. She targets men with elderly mothers, insinuates herself into the family, and then accidents happen. Has Andre seen this information? I asked. Not yet. According to Donovan's instructions, Andre is to receive this file only if he attempts to contest your inheritance or if Eleni makes a move against you directly. Mr. Morrison's expression was grim. Donovan was hoping that the financial incentives alone might be enough to open Andre's eyes. And if they're not, then we reveal everything. The truth about Eleni's past, the documentation of her manipulation tactics, all of it. Donovan felt that faced with irrefutable evidence, Andre would have no choice but to see his wife for what she really is. I thought about my son, about the sweet boy who used to make me mud pies and insist they were chocolate cake. How would he react to learning that his wife was likely a serial killer? There's something else, Mr. Morrison said, pulling out a sealed envelope. Donovan left this letter specifically for Andre, to be delivered only if all other measures fail. He handed me the envelope. Andre's name was written on it in Donovan's careful handwriting, and underneath, "For my son, when he's ready to remember who he really is." What happens now? Marcus asked. Now we file the real will with the probate court. Given the unusual circumstances, there will likely be challenges, but the will is ironclad. Donovan made sure of that. Mr. Morrison gathered the papers. I should warn you, Mrs. Patterson, when Eleni discovers that she won't be inheriting anything, she's likely to become desperate. Desperate people do desperate things. A chill ran through me. Are you saying I'm in danger? I'm saying you should be very careful. Don't be alone with her under any circumstances. Document any contact she tries to have with you, and consider staying with someone until this is all settled. Marcus spoke up immediately. She can stay with me. I have a small place outside town, very private. I looked at him. This brother-in-law I'd just learned existed. This stranger who'd stepped in to protect me just as Donovan had planned. I can't impose on you like that. You're not imposing. You're family. His voice was firm. Besides, Donovan made me promise to keep you safe, and I intend to honor that promise. Mr. Morrison nodded approvingly. That's wise. I'll expedite the probate process as much as possible, but these things take time. In the meantime, I'll have my office contact Andre to inform him of the real will and the conditions of his inheritance. As we prepared to leave, I had one more question. Mr. Morrison, in your professional opinion, will Andre choose the money over his wife? The lawyer was quiet for a long moment. Mrs. Patterson, I've been practicing law for 35 years. I've seen families torn apart by greed, love, loyalty, and fear. In my experience, when someone is finally confronted with the truth about a person they love, they have to make a choice between what they want to believe and what they know to be real. He walked us to the door. Your son sounds like a good man who's been manipulated by an expert, but he's also Donovan's son, which means he has strong moral fiber underneath all that manipulation. The question is whether Eleni has buried that moral fiber too deep to reach. As we left the building, I felt like I was walking into a new chapter of my life. For the first time since Donovan's death, I had hope, not just for financial security, but for the possibility of getting my son back. But I also felt the weight of the knowledge I now carried. My daughter-in-law was likely a killer, and my son was her next target. The money Donovan had left might save Andre's life, but only if he was smart enough to choose it over the woman who had spent years isolating him from everyone who truly loved him. What do you think will happen when Andre finds out about the will? I asked Marcus as we walked to his car. I think, Marcus said slowly, we're about to find out exactly who your son really is underneath all of Eleni's manipulation. His words should have been comforting, but as we drove away from the law office, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were about to enter the most dangerous phase of this whole ordeal. Eleni had killed before when her plans were threatened, and now, for the first time in her carefully orchestrated scheme, she was about to face real consequences. The question was, what would she do when she realized her perfect plan was falling apart? And would Andre figure out the truth before it was too late? 3 days after our meeting with Mr. Morrison, the phone calls started. I was staying at Marcus's small cabin on the outskirts of town, a cozy place surrounded by pine trees that reminded me of the vacation home Donovan and I had always dreamed of buying. Marcus had insisted I take the bedroom while he slept on the couch, and for the first time in weeks, I felt safe. That feeling shattered when my phone rang at 7 in the morning. Mom, Andre's voice was strained, confused. I just got a call from some lawyer downtown. He says Dad left a different will. That doesn't make sense. I gripped the phone, my heart racing. Andre, there's so much you don't know. Did you know about this? His voice was sharp now, accusatory. Did you and Dad plan this behind my back? Honey, please let me explain. Explain what? How you manipulated my dying father into cutting Eleni out of his will? The words hit me like slaps. I can't believe you'd be so vindictive. Vindictive. That was Eleni's word, her poison already working through Andre's veins. Andre, your father was trying to protect... The line went dead. Marcus, who'd been making coffee in the kitchen, came over with a concerned expression. Eleni got to him first? I nodded, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. My son believed I was the villain in this story, just as Eleni had trained him to believe. The second call came an hour later, This time it was Eleni herself. "You pathetic old witch," she hissed, her cultured facade completely dropped. "Did you really think you could steal what's rightfully ours?" "I didn't steal anything, Eleni. Donovan left me what he wanted me to have. That money belongs to Andre, to our future children." Her voice was getting higher, more frantic. "You're a sick, dying old woman. What do you need with all that money?" "I'm not dying," I said quietly. "My cancer is responding well to treatment." There was a long pause. When Eleni spoke again, her voice was ice cold. "We'll see about that." She hung up, and I stared at the phone with growing dread. There had been something in her tone, something that made me think of those two previous husbands, those two elderly mothers who'd died so conveniently. Marcus took the phone from my shaking hands. "We're going to the police. And tell them what? That my daughter-in-law threatened me? That your daughter-in-law has killed before and just threatened to kill again." His voice was firm. "Donovan prepared for this too, Sylvia. It's time to use the nuclear option." The police station was a squat brick building that smelled of coffee and industrial disinfectant. Detective Sarah Chen, no relation to Eleni's first husband, she assured us, was a woman in her 40s with kind eyes and the tired expression of someone who'd seen too much. "Mrs. Patterson, I've reviewed the files your husband compiled," she said, spreading the documents across her desk. "This is extensive documentation of harassment and psychological manipulation. But what concerns me most is this." She tapped the private investigator's report about Eleni's previous marriages. 2 suspicious deaths in Los Angeles, 2 more in Phoenix, all within the same pattern: elderly mothers dying shortly before their sons, with Eleni as the primary beneficiary. Detective Chen looked up at us. "I've been in touch with investigators in both cities. They've reopened those cases." "Can you arrest her?" Marcus asked. "Not yet, but we can investigate, and we can provide protection for Mrs. Patterson if she feels threatened." The detective leaned forward. "Has she made any direct threats?" I told her about the phone call, about the tone in Eleni's voice when she said, "We'll see about that." "That's enough to bring her in for questioning," Detective Chen said. "Sometimes a little pressure is all it takes to make someone slip up." She was wrong. Eleni was too smart to slip up under questioning. But what the detective didn't anticipate was how desperate Eleni would become when she realized the walls were closing in. That evening, I was sitting in Marcus's living room reading when I heard a car pull up outside. Through the curtains, I could see Andre's Honda in the driveway. "Stay here," Marcus said, but I was already moving toward the door. Andre stood on the porch alone, his hands shoved deep in his pockets. He looked older somehow, like the events of the past few days had aged him years. "Mom," he said quietly, "we need to talk." I opened the door wider and he stepped inside. His eyes took in the small, comfortable cabin, lingering on the family photos Marcus had placed on the mantel, pictures of him and Donovan as children, before they were separated. "Who is he?" Andre asked, looking at Marcus. "I'm your father's twin brother," Marcus said simply. "I know this is a shock." Andre stared at him for a long moment. "Dad had a twin brother?" "Your father was forced to keep my existence secret," Marcus explained gently. "But he never forgot me. And when he got sick, he reached out." Andre sank into a chair, looking overwhelmed. "None of this makes sense. Why would Dad hide you? Why would he make a secret will? Why would he—" His voice broke. "Why would he try to destroy my marriage?" "Because your marriage is destroying you," Marcus said quietly. "And your father loved you too much to watch it happen." "You don't understand," Andre said, his voice rising. "Eleni loves me. She gave up everything to be with me. Her career, her friends. She depends on me." "Andre," I said softly, "there are things about Eleni that you don't know." "More lies?" He laughed bitterly. "First you fake cancer to get sympathy." "I'm not faking cancer." The words exploded out of me. "I have stage 2 breast cancer. I've been in chemotherapy for 6 months, and I lost my hair because I'm trying to save my life." Andre's face went white. "But Eleni said—" "Eleni lied." Marcus pulled out the folder of Donovan's documentation. Your father spent 3 years documenting every lie she told, every manipulation, every attempt to isolate you from your mother. Andre took the folder with trembling hands. As he read, I watched his expression change from confusion to disbelief to horror. This says she told people Mom was becoming senile, he whispered. But Mom's not. You're not. I've never shown any signs of dementia or mental decline, I said gently. You can ask Dr. Williams. You can ask any of our neighbors. Your father documented the truth because he knew Eleni would try to paint me as incompetent. Andre kept reading, his face growing paler with each page. She told me you called me at work 6 times in one day asking for money. But this says you only called once to wish me happy birthday. Do you remember that day, Andre? Do you remember what you told me when I called? His face crumpled. I was short with you, cold. I said I was too busy to talk because Eleni had told me you were being clingy and inappropriate. Your father heard that conversation, Marcus said quietly. It broke his heart. Andre was crying now, ugly sobs that shook his whole body. What have I done? How could I believe all this? How could I treat you like that? I moved to sit beside him, putting my arms around him for the first time in years. Because she's very good at what she does, honey. She's had years of practice. Practice? Andre looked up at me with red, swollen eyes. Marcus exchanged a glance with me, and I nodded. It was time. Andre, I said gently, Eleni has been married before, twice, and both times her husband's mothers died under suspicious circumstances, followed by the husbands themselves. Andre went completely still. What are you saying? We're saying your wife is very likely a serial killer, Marcus said bluntly, and you and your mother are her current targets. Andre shot to his feet, his face flushed with anger. That's insane. You're both insane if you think... He was cut off by the sound of a car door slamming outside. Through the window, we could see Eleni getting out of her BMW, her face twisted with rage. How did she find us? Marcus muttered. GPS on Andre's phone, I realized, my heart starting to race. Eleni didn't knock. She burst through the door like a hurricane, her perfectly styled hair wild, her makeup smeared. There you are, she snarled, pointing at me. Hiding away with your conspiracy theories and your lies. Eleni, calm down, Andre said, but she ignored him. Do you know what she's done? Eleni spun toward Andre, her eyes blazing. She's convinced the police to investigate me. Me! Like I'm some kind of criminal. Maybe because you are a criminal, Marcus said quietly. Eleni's head snapped toward him. And who the hell are you supposed to be? I'm Donovan's brother, the one he thought was dead. For the first time since she'd arrived, Eleni looked shaken. That's impossible. Donovan didn't have a brother. Actually, I do, Andre said quietly, and something in his tone made Eleni freeze. I've seen the birth certificates, the adoption records. It's all real. Eleni's mask was slipping, revealing something ugly underneath. Andre, honey, they're lying to you. Can't you see that? They're trying to turn you against me. Like Robert Chen? Marcus asked conversationally. Or Marcus Henley? Eleni went white as chalk. Did you think we wouldn't find out? Marcus continued. Did you think you could just keep killing husbands and mothers-in-law forever? You're insane, Eleni whispered, but her voice lacked conviction. Andre was staring at his wife like he'd never seen her before. Eleni, just tell me the truth, please. Just this once, tell me the truth. For a moment, I thought she might break down, might confess, might show some shred of remorse. Instead, her face hardened into something terrifying. The truth. She laughed, and the sound was like breaking glass. The truth is that you're all pathetic. Andre, you're weak and stupid and boring. Your mother is a bitter old woman who should have died months ago, and your precious father was a fool who thought he could outplay me. Andre recoiled like he'd been slapped. Eleni, I gave you 12 years of my life, she screamed. 12 years of pretending to love you, pretending to want your boring little life. And this is how you repay me? By believing lies about me? They're not lies, are they? Andre said quietly. Your other husbands, their mothers, you killed them. Eleni's smile was chilling. Prove it. And that's when I knew, with absolute certainty, that we were all in terrible danger. The silence that followed Elaine's confession was deafening. She stood there in Marcus's living room, her mask completely off for the first time, and I could see the cold calculation behind her eyes. She was deciding something, weighing her options, and I knew with crystal clarity that none of us were safe. Andre was staring at his wife like he'd never seen her before. "Elaine," he whispered, "please tell me you didn't. Please tell me you're not." She laughed, a sound like ice cracking. "What, Andre? A killer? Is that what you want to ask me?" "The police are already investigating," Marcus said quietly, his hand moving slowly toward his phone. "There's nothing you can do now." "Isn't there?" Elaine's smile was terrifying. "You'd be surprised what accidents can happen to elderly people with cancer. Falls downstairs, medication mix-ups, house fires started by faulty wiring." My blood turned to ice. She was talking about killing me right in front of Andre, right in front of Marcus, like it was nothing more than planning a grocery list. "You're sick," Andre said, backing away from her. "You're really, truly sick." "I'm practical," Elaine snapped. "Do you know how much money your family has? Do you know what we could have done with that money? But no, you had to be loyal to Mommy, had to worry about precious Daddy's feelings. They're my family. They're obstacles." Elaine's voice rose to a shriek. "Just like Robert's mother was an obstacle. Just like Marcus's mother was an obstacle. Just like she pointed at me, is an obstacle." Andre was crying now, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of rage. "How could you? How could you make me believe all those lies about my mother?" "Because you're weak," Elaine spat. "You wanted to believe them. You wanted an excuse to pull away from her because taking care of aging parents is hard work, and you're too selfish to do hard work." The words hit Andre like physical blows, but I could see something changing in his face. The boy I'd raised, the man with a good heart buried under years of manipulation, was finally fighting his way to the surface. "Get out," he said quietly. "What?" "Get out of here. Get out of my life. We're done." Elaine's expression shifted from fury to panic. "Andre, no, you don't understand. I did this for us. Everything I did was for us. You killed people. I killed people who were in our way, people who would have made us miserable." She grabbed his arm, her nails digging into his skin. "Don't you see? We can still have everything. The money, the house, the life we planned." Andre jerked away from her. "I don't want any of it. Not if it came from murder." "You're making a mistake," Elaine said, her voice dropping to something low and dangerous. "A huge mistake." That's when I noticed Marcus had managed to dial 911 on his phone, holding it low so Elaine wouldn't see. Help was coming, but would it arrive in time? Elaine seemed to sense that control was slipping away from her. Her eyes darted between the three of us, and I could see her making calculations. If she was going down, she was going to take us with her. She reached into her purse, and for a moment I thought she might have a gun. Instead, she pulled out a small glass vial filled with clear liquid. "Do you know what this is?" she asked conversationally. "It's insulin, perfectly harmless to a diabetic in the right dose. But to someone who's not diabetic, especially someone weakened by cancer treatments," she smiled, "it causes hypoglycemic shock. Looks just like a heart attack." "Elaine, put that away," Andre said, his voice shaking. "I've been carrying this for weeks," she continued as if he hadn't spoken. "Waiting for the right moment. I was going to use it after the funeral, make it look like grief had triggered a medical emergency. But then that stupid will ruined everything." She took a step toward me, and Marcus moved to block her path. "Get out of my way, old man." "I don't think so." Elaine's laugh was hysterical now. "You think you can stop me? I've gotten away with this 4 times already, 4 times. And I would have gotten away with it again if Donovan hadn't been so paranoid." 5 times, Andre said quietly. Elaine turned to him, confused. "What?" "You said 4 times. But that would be Robert, his mother, Marcus, and his mother. That's only 4 people, but you mentioned 5 times. For the first time, Elaine looked rattled. I misspoke." But Andre was shaking his head. "No, You said 5 times because there was someone else, wasn't there? Someone before Robert. Andre, who was it, Eleni? Who was your first victim? Eleni's composure cracked completely. It doesn't matter. It was a long time ago. It was your first husband, wasn't it? The one you told me died in a car accident when you were 22. Andre's voice was horrifyingly calm. How did you really kill him? He was going to leave me. The words burst out of her like a dam breaking. He found out about the money I'd been stealing from his business and he was going to divorce me. I couldn't let him ruin my life. So you killed him. It was supposed to look like suicide, but the stupid investigation dragged on for months and I had to leave town. Eleni was sobbing now, years of carefully constructed lies tumbling down around her. But I learned from my mistakes. I got better at it. In the distance, I could hear sirens. Marcus's call had gone through. Eleni heard them too. Her face went through a series of expressions: panic, rage, and finally, a terrifying calm. If I'm going down, she said quietly, I'm taking her with me. She lunged toward me with the vial of insulin, but Andre was faster. He tackled his wife, sending them both crashing to the floor. The vial went flying, shattering against the wall. You idiot! Eleni screamed, clawing at Andre's face. You've ruined everything! Andre pinned her arms. His face streaked with blood from her nails. You ruined everything the moment you decided murder was acceptable. The sirens were getting louder. Within minutes, the small cabin was filled with police officers, paramedics, and Detective Chen. Mrs. Kozlov, Detective Chen said, crouching beside where Eleni lay on the floor, still struggling against Andre's grip. You're under arrest for the murders of James Kozlov, Robert Chen, Margaret Chen, Marcus Henley, Rose Henley, and the attempted murder of Sylvia Patterson. As they led Eleni away in handcuffs, she looked back at me one last time. You think you've won, she said, her voice eerily calm again, but you'll die alone anyway. Cancer will kill you, and Andre will move on with his life, and no one will remember you. I looked at my son, who was being treated by a paramedic for the scratches on his face. I won't die alone, I said quietly. And even if I did, I'd rather die alone than live the way you have, surrounded by people you've murdered for money. Eleni said nothing else as they put her in the police car. 6 months later, I sat in my garden, watching the roses Donovan had planted bloom for another spring. My last cancer scan had been clear, and my hair was growing back, still thin, still gray, but mine again. Andre came by every Sunday now, just like he had when he was young. We cooked together, worked in the garden together, talked about everything we'd missed during those lost years. The trust fund Donovan had set up was released to Andre after his divorce was finalized, but he'd surprised me by using most of it to set up a small foundation in his father's name, providing support for families dealing with elder abuse. Marcus had become a permanent fixture in my life, the brother I'd never had, and the family connection to Donovan I'd thought I'd lost forever. He'd moved into the small apartment above the garage, and we took care of each other in the quiet, comfortable way of people who'd learned not to take family for granted. The trial had been swift. Faced with overwhelming evidence from 5 different jurisdictions, Eleni had pleaded guilty to avoid the death penalty. She was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The newspapers had called her a black widow, but I tried not to think about that. She was gone from our lives, and that was what mattered. Andre had struggled with guilt for months, blaming himself for not seeing through Eleni's manipulation sooner. But therapy was helping, and slowly, the son I'd raised was emerging from the shell of the man she'd tried to create. I keep thinking about all the years we lost, he said one Sunday afternoon as we sat on the porch drinking lemonade. Don't, I said gently. Think about all the years we have ahead of us. He smiled, the first real smile I'd seen from him since before his marriage. Dad would be happy to see us together again. He knew we'd find our way back to each other, I said, touching the locket at my throat. A new one Andre had given me with pictures of him and Donovan inside. He just made sure we'd have the chance. As the sun set over our quiet street, I thought about Donovan's final gift. Not the money, not the house, but the truth. The truth that had set us all free from Eleni's web of lies. The truth that had given me back my son and introduced me to a brother I'd never known I had. Some people might say I was lucky to survive Eleni's plot, but I knew better. I wasn't lucky. I was loved. Loved by a husband who'd protected me even beyond the grave. Loved by a brother-in-law who'd honored a promise to a twin he'd been forced to forget. And loved by a son who'd found his way home despite years of manipulation. That evening, as I prepared for bed in the house I would never have to leave, I said a quiet thank you to Donovan. He'd been right about everything: the danger, the solution, and most importantly, the power of family to overcome even the darkest evil. I was 70 years old, a cancer survivor, and for the first time in years, I was truly free. Free from fear, free from manipulation, and free to live the rest of my life surrounded by people who loved me for exactly who I was. And that, I realized, was the greatest inheritance of all. Now I'm curious about you who listened to my story. What would you do if you were in my place? Have you ever been through something similar? Comment below. And meanwhile, I'm leaving on the final screen 2 other stories that are channel favorites, and they will definitely surprise you. Thank you for watching until here.